Imagine this. You're wandering through a restricted military zone, long abandoned and forgotten by history. The landscape is barren, littered with rusting debris from failed experiments and discarded war machines. But then, something catches your eye. Half buried beneath layers of dust and overgrown vegetation lies a structure unlike anything you've ever seen. It isn't a plane. It isn't a missile. It isn't anything human. Its surface is smooth yet unyielding, as if forged from an alloy that defies the very laws of metallurgy. There are no seams, no rivets, no visible means of entry. The material absorbs light instead of reflecting it, giving it an unsettling, almost unnatural appearance. Your first instinct is disbelief. Could this really be what it appears to be? An actual extraterrestrial vessel? The idea seems absurd, the kind of thing whispered about in conspiracy circles and classified government reports buried under layers of denial. And yet, here it is, lying in the dirt like a discarded relic. But if this was an alien craft, why was it just left here? Why wasn't it locked away in some top-secret facility? More importantly, why didn't it look functional? This isn't just a fantasy. History is riddled with stories of mysterious, unidentified objects recovered from places they had no business being. From the infamous Roswell incident to whispers of secret hangars filled with non-terrestrial artifacts, the question has always remained. If we ever got our hands on alien technology, what would we do with it? Would we study it? Dissect it? Try to replicate it? Or would we transform it into something else entirely? The answer to that question, in this case, is one that changed the course of history forever. It all started in the early 21st century when a bizarre, seemingly worthless alien craft was found deep in an uncharted region. Officially, it was labeled an anomalous aerospace object. But behind closed doors, scientists, engineers, and military strategists were scrambling to figure out what they were dealing with. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, HFY Chronicles-849 is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us grow this community together. At first, it was a disappointment. The ship, if it could even be called that, was inert. No propulsion systems, no discernible weaponry, no energy output. It was just there. A silent, immovable object that seemed to defy human understanding. Scientists conducted every test imaginable. X-rays, electromagnetic scans, even attempts to cut into the material with diamond-edged tools. Nothing worked. The structure remained unyielding, impervious to everything humanity threw at it. Some believed it was a transport vessel, others speculated it was an ancient probe, long since deactivated. The more time passed, the more it seemed like nothing more than an interstellar hunk of junk. As the years dragged on, interest waned. The project was gradually defunded, and the once highly classified research effort was downgraded to a low-priority curiosity. The ship, now deemed useless, was moved to a storage facility and eventually abandoned in an old military hangar. Dust collected. The world moved on. The greatest discovery in human history. Forgotten. Then, something happened that no one could have predicted. A simple accident, one that would change everything. It all started with an engineer, just another faceless worker in a long line of personnel assigned to maintain the facility. He wasn't a high-ranking scientist. He wasn't some genius with multiple degrees. He was just doing his job, running routine maintenance checks. Part of that job involved scanning old artifacts with electromagnetic field detectors, ensuring there were no hazardous materials left unaccounted for. But when he ran the scanner across the hull of the alien craft, something unexpected occurred. The moment the electromagnetic pulse touched its surface, the ship reacted. The once darkened metallic husk trembled, almost imperceptibly at first, then violently. Symbols, previously invisible, suddenly glowed along its structure, illuminating the entire hangar in an eerie, pulsating light. The patterns moved, shifting as if alive, their arrangement constantly changing, like an indecipherable code rewriting itself in real time. The engineer, frozen in shock, barely had time to process what was happening before an entirely new phenomenon took place. Without warning, the ship's surface began to change. Panels shifted. Parts of its hull folded in on themselves, revealing intricate alien mechanisms beneath. The dull, lifeless exterior started to pulse, as if awakening from a long, deep sleep. In that moment, one thing became terrifyingly clear. This ship was never broken. It was never inert. It was waiting for something specific, something it had now received. And for the first time in history, humanity was about to learn exactly what that meant. The air inside the hangar became charged with an electric hum, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. The engineer, still frozen in place, felt the hair on his arms rise as if static electricity was building around him. The alien ship, once nothing more than a lifeless husk, was now very much awake. But it wasn't just turning on. It was changing. The smooth metallic surface of the vessel, which had previously appeared seamless and featureless, now shifted and rearranged itself like a living organism. Sections of the hull peeled back in layers, revealing a complex network of glowing conduits underneath. The lights pulsated in a rhythmic pattern, like a heartbeat, as if the ship was alive, or at least something inside it was responding. The engineer stumbled backward, his mind racing. What had he done? He hadn't input any commands, hadn't pressed any buttons. He had simply passed an electromagnetic scanner over the surface. That was it. And yet, the response was undeniable. This ship had been waiting for something, and he had unknowingly provided the trigger. Panic surged through him as he fumbled for his radio, calling for security. But before he could even get a response, the ship emitted a low, otherworldly vibration that reverberated through the floor. The sheer depth of the sound made his bones rattle, as if the very frequency of reality itself was being altered. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, silence. Security personnel arrived moments later, their boots echoing loudly in the vast hangar. They found the engineer standing in stunned silence, staring at the now active ship, its pulsing lights, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The soldiers raised their weapons instinctively, though none of them had any idea what they were dealing with. Word of the incident spread fast. Within hours, top-level military officials were notified. Within days, the facility was locked down under the highest level of security. The ship, once deemed worthless and left to collect dust, was now the center of the most significant military operation in modern history. But the real mystery was only just beginning. A team of the world's top scientists, engineers, and linguists was assembled to study the ship's sudden activation. The first breakthrough came when they realized the glowing symbols weren't just random. They were responding to electromagnetic energy. Every time a specific frequency was introduced, the patterns shifted, as if the ship was trying to communicate. For months, the team worked tirelessly, decoding what they could. It wasn't long before they discovered something even more astonishing. This vessel was not just a simple transport or exploration craft. It was something else entirely. The material composing the ship was unlike anything found on Earth. It wasn't just resistant to conventional weapons. It was impervious to them. Tests with lasers, explosives, and even directed energy weapons had no effect. It was as if the very structure of the ship absorbed and redistributed energy in ways human science couldn't explain. And then came the most shocking revelation of all. This ship wasn't abandoned. It had been left behind. Ancient myths and legends from different cultures spoke of gods descending from the sky, of celestial chariots and weapons capable of leveling mountains. Had this ship been sitting here for centuries? Had it been forgotten? Or was it intentionally placed here for humanity to find? The implications were staggering. If an alien civilization had left this ship behind, what else had they left? And more importantly, why? But while the scientists and theorists debated these questions, the military had already come to a conclusion of their own. The ship's abilities, its impervious armor, and its energy-absorbing technology weren't just scientific curiosities, they were assets, weapons. If this vessel could be reactivated, repurposed, and understood, it would give humanity an advantage unlike anything else in the known galaxy. The decision was made. The alien ship would no longer be an artifact for study. It would become Earth's first interstellar war machine. The next step was clear. Humanity had to find a way to control it. The hangar, once a cold and forgotten storage facility, had now transformed into the heart of Earth's most secretive military project. The alien Starship, once dismissed as a lifeless relic, was now the subject of relentless study, testing, and experimentation. Engineers, physicists, and computer scientists worked around the clock, analyzing every inch of its strange, metallic body, hoping to unlock the secrets buried within its unfathomable design. But the ship refused to cooperate. Despite their best efforts, there was no interface, no control panel, no obvious method of piloting it. Unlike human spacecraft, there were no switches, no buttons, no digital screens, only the pulsating alien glyphs that changed in response to electromagnetic energy. Every attempt to force interaction failed. Efforts to cut into the ship's hull with diamond-tipped drills, plasma torches, and high-frequency lasers were completely ineffective. The material simply absorbed the energy or deflected the force, rendering human tools useless. Frustration built among the researchers. Weeks turned into months. The world's brightest minds had never encountered a machine so advanced yet so elusive. The ship was like an impenetrable vault, hiding knowledge that could change the fate of humanity. If only they could open the door. Then came the breakthrough. It happened when a neuroscientist on the project suggested an unorthodox approach. What if the ship wasn't controlled with physical inputs? What if it required something more organic? A connection beyond simple mechanics? After all, the vessel had responded to electromagnetic fields. What if, just maybe, it was designed to be piloted not with hands, but with the mind? The experiment was risky. They designed an array of sensors capable of detecting and amplifying brainwaves, using a modified neural interface originally developed for artificial limb control. A volunteer, one of the military's top test pilots, was chosen for the first trial. His neural patterns were mapped, synchronized, and fed into a quantum computing system connected to the ship. If the theory was correct, the ship would respond. If it failed, it would be another dead end in a long series of disappointments. The moment his consciousness linked with the system, something extraordinary happened. The ship pulsed brighter than ever before, the alien glyphs flowing in rapid, mesmerizing patterns. Then, in an instant, the entire vessel came to life. The once still structure shifted, its metallic surface rippling like liquid, adjusting its form as if reacting to the new presence inside it. The hum that had once been a distant whisper now resonated through the air like a deep, reverberating chime, and then gravity ceased. The ship lifted off the hangar floor effortlessly, defying every known law of physics. No visible thrusters, no propulsion system, no exhaust. It simply floated, as if gravity itself had lost its hold over it. The pilot, still connected through the neural interface, gasped. He wasn't just inside the ship. He was part of it. He could feel it. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was an extension of himself. He could sense the structure around him, the energy flowing through its core, the vast potential it held. With just a thought, he willed it forward, and the ship obeyed. It was instantaneous, like moving a limb. The vessel responded with perfect precision, shifting its position in the air without sound, without hesitation. Scientists and military officials stood frozen, watching in awe as humanity's first pilot-controlled alien warship moved at will. The implications were staggering. This was no ordinary spacecraft. It wasn't just an advanced piece of technology. It was an entirely new form of technology. A living machine. A fusion of organic thought and mechanical perfection, and the military wasted no time in exploiting this discovery. They called in the best pilots, the best strategists, and the most skilled operators from across the world. Each of them was tested, their brainwaves analyzed, their minds synced to the neural interface. Some failed, unable to connect, their consciousness rejected by the ship. But those who succeeded described the experience as something beyond anything they had ever known. It was like becoming a god, like merging with something far greater than themselves. With the ship now operational, the next phase of the project began. It had to be tested, weaponized, modified for human warfare. Yet, despite all their efforts, one question remained unanswered. Why had the aliens abandoned such a powerful vessel? Had it been a mistake? A relic left behind after a great war? Or was it deliberate? A test? A challenge? Humanity had no way of knowing. But one thing was certain. This ship, once discarded as worthless, had now become the most powerful weapon in Earth's arsenal. And soon, the universe would know it too. The moment humanity unlocked the ship's neural interface, everything changed. The realization that the craft could be piloted purely by thought shattered centuries of conventional physics and engineering. It was no longer just an alien artifact. It was a sentient war machine waiting for a worthy pilot. But what truly sent chills through the scientific and military communities wasn't just the fact that it worked. It was how effortlessly it adapted. Within hours of the first successful connection, the ship's systems evolved. The pulsating alien glyphs, previously indecipherable, began reorganizing themselves into patterns that the human mind could comprehend. The test pilot, still linked to the vessel, started perceiving things. Data streaming into his consciousness in ways he couldn't describe. The ship wasn't just feeding him information. It was rewriting his understanding of reality. He felt the ship scanning him, analyzing his neurological structure, understanding his thoughts. It was no longer a machine waiting for orders. It was learning. That was when the real tests began. The next challenge was propulsion. The ship had lifted itself effortlessly in the hangar, but could it operate in Earth's atmosphere? In space? Could it maneuver with the agility needed for combat? The military wasn't interested in exploration. They wanted a weapon. They moved the ship to a secure airfield, far from prying eyes, and prepared for the first atmospheric flight test. The pilot reconnected to the neural interface, feeling the ship respond instantly. With just a thought, the vessel ascended, rising above the test facility in complete silence. No jet engines, no combustion, no sonic boom, just pure motion, as if it were slipping between dimensions rather than pushing through air. Then, in an instant, it vanished. Observers on the ground panicked. Instruments lost all readings. Radar. Stations scrambled to locate it. For exactly 3 seconds, the ship had simply ceased to exist. And then, just as suddenly, it was back, hovering exactly where it had started. The pilot was gasping, eyes wide with shock. He hadn't just traveled forward. He had skipped through space. The ship had folded the distance, treating air and gravity as meaningless. It was as if it had no mass, no inertia. One moment it was in one place, the next it was somewhere else. It wasn't moving. It was displacing itself. And that was only the beginning. The next experiment was a speed trial. The pilot willed the ship forward, and within milliseconds he was 30 miles away. He barely noticed the acceleration. There was no G-force, no resistance. It was instantaneous, effortless. The military officials monitoring the test site were speechless. This wasn't just superior technology. It was beyond anything humans had ever conceived. But what happened next would redefine warfare forever. The ship had weapons. They weren't traditional missiles or energy cannons. There were no visible gun turrets or launch bays. And yet, when the pilot focused on a designated test target, a decommissioned battleship sitting in the ocean miles away, the ship responded. A ripple of energy formed around the vessel, distorting the air like a mirage. The pilot didn't fire a weapon in the conventional sense. He thought about destruction. And the ship delivered. In an instant, the battleship disintegrated. There was no explosion, no debris, no fire. It was simply gone, as if erased from existence. Sensors scrambled to make sense of what had happened. There was no heat signature, no radiation, only a faint residual energy signature, something unlike anything recorded before. This was not just firepower. This was annihilation on a fundamental level. The implications were staggering. If a single thought could erase an entire structure, what could this ship do against an enemy fleet? A planet? A star? The military strategists were terrified. They had spent centuries refining weapons, bullets, missiles, nuclear warheads, believing they had reached the pinnacle of destructive power. And now, here was something that didn't just destroy. It removed. They had turned an abandoned alien relic into the most dangerous weapon in human history. And they had no idea if they could control it. Because something else was happening. The pilot had started hearing things. Not voices in the traditional sense, but impressions, flashes of thoughts that weren't his own. At first, he dismissed them as residual effects from the neural interface, but then they became stronger, more distinct. It was as if the ship had memories, flashes of distant stars, echoes of battles long since fought, strange symbols that meant nothing to the human mind but carried the weight of something ancient. And then came the realization. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It had been in battle before. It had fought before. But who or what had it been fighting? The scientists and military officials didn't know it yet, but they had just awoken something far greater than a mere machine, and soon the universe would. Notice, the revelation that the ship had memories changed everything. It was no longer just an abandoned relic. It was a veteran. The vessel had seen war, had fought battles beyond human understanding, and now it was in humanity's hands. But what if it wasn't meant to be found? As the military scrambled to decipher more of the ship's past, the pilot began experiencing something far more unsettling. At night, outside of testing, his dreams were no longer his own. Vivid flashes of alien worlds, burning atmospheres, shattered moons drifting in the void. Each scene more chaotic than the last. He would wake up gasping for breath, his heart pounding, feeling as though he had been there. The strangest part? Every time he reconnected to the ship's neural interface, the visions became clearer. They weren't just random images. They were memories. The ship was showing him something. At first, the scientist dismissed it as a neurological side effect, a psychological reaction to prolonged exposure to alien technology. But when they scanned the pilot's brain, they found something chilling. His neural activity had changed. It was evolving. Pathways that had never existed before were forming. His brain was adapting to something beyond human biology. He was learning things he had never been taught, concepts, languages, even physics beyond what Earth had discovered. But it wasn't just him. The ship was changing too. It began to respond differently. At first, the alterations were subtle. The glyphs on the interface became clearer, rearranging themselves into something eerily familiar. Patterns that mirrored human languages, mathematical formulas, even Earth-based physics. It was as if the ship was meeting humanity halfway, reshaping its very structure to accommodate its new pilots. Then, it started to think ahead. During a routine test flight, the pilot attempted a maneuver at high speeds, one that should have required lightning-fast reflexes. But before he could even react, the ship had already executed the movement. It wasn't just responding to commands, it was anticipating them. That's when the scientists realized the ship wasn't just a machine, it was alive. Not in a biological sense, but as something more, a sentient intelligence, an entity bound to its technology. It wasn't just piloted, it was bonded to its user. And that raised the most terrifying question of all. Who or what had piloted it before? The answer came when they finally cracked the ship's deeper memory banks. A single image appeared, a fleet, vast and incomprehensible, stretching across the black void of space. The ships weren't like the one they had recovered. They were larger, more menacing, adorned with jagged structures that seemed to hum with barely contained energy. And then came the sound. A transmission. At first it was nothing but static, a deep, grating noise like distant thunder. Then, words began to emerge, not in any known language, but with a tone that sent shivers down every researcher's spine. It was a warning. The ship wasn't abandoned. It was left behind. Not as junk, not as an offering, but as a trap. Humanity had done exactly what the original owners had intended. They had taken the bait. The ship was never meant to be a gift. It was a signal, and now, whoever had left it there knew exactly where to find them. The realization struck like a thunderclap. This wasn't an accidental discovery, nor a fortunate windfall of alien technology. Humanity had unknowingly set a beacon alight in the dark void of space, signaling its location to an intelligence that had deliberately left the vessel behind. The ship, with its shifting language, its evolving interface, and its mysterious bond to the pilot, had been guiding them toward this revelation from the beginning. But the most unsettling part wasn't the message itself. It was the intent behind it. Why would an advanced civilization willingly leave behind a ship, an artifact of war, for an inferior species to find? The answer, when it came, was far worse than anyone could have imagined. In the deepest parts of the ship's memory banks, buried beneath encrypted data far beyond human comprehension, the scientists found something that sent shivers down their spines. A timestamp. A countdown. Not one that had been activated when humanity powered up the ship, but one that had already been running, long before they had ever touched it. The ship had not only been waiting, it had been watching. It had been broadcasting. The realization sent the entire operation into a frenzied panic. If the ship had been sending signals, then whoever had left it behind had known of Earth's existence for far longer than anyone had anticipated. The question was no longer whether they were coming. It was when the pilot, now more connected to the ship than ever, felt it first. A presence, an unseen force pressing against the edges of his consciousness. It wasn't human. It wasn't even fully alien. It was something else, something vast, ancient, and aware. It wasn't just a warship that had been left behind. It was a probe. A key to a door that should have remained locked. The warning in the transmission had been clear. The ship wasn't lost. It was discarded. Not because it was broken, not because it was useless, but because it was dangerous. And now, that danger belonged to humanity. There was no time to deliberate. The military, once intent on reverse engineering the ship for technological advancements, now faced a harrowing decision. They could dismantle the vessel, destroy every trace of it, and hope that whatever was coming could still be avoided. Or, they could prepare. The pilot, more connected to the ship than any human had ever been, made the decision for them. He would fly it. He would train with it. He would push its limits, push his limits, and turn it into what it had never been meant to be. Humanity's weapon. The scientists and engineers worked around the clock, integrating human weaponry, fortifying its systems, and upgrading its defensive capabilities. But no matter what they did, no matter how much steel and firepower they added, the most powerful part of the ship remained its mind, and the connection it shared with its pilot. Every day, the pilot changed. His reactions grew faster, his thoughts more aligned with the ship's own. He could anticipate enemy maneuvers before they happened, process complex battlefield strategies in milliseconds. He wasn't just piloting the ship anymore, he was becoming part of it. And then, one day, it happened. A breach. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't from the ship itself. It was outside. Something had arrived, far beyond the orbit of Saturn, beyond the Kuiper Belt. Something was coming. Not one, but many. Shadows moving against the cosmic background, shifting in and out of detection like ghosts in the abyss. The pilot stood before the ship, its hull gleaming under the dim lights of the underground hangar, and understood what he had to do. They had left this ship behind because they believed it would be useless in human hands. They had abandoned it because they thought an inferior species could never understand its full potential. They had underestimated humanity. Now, as the darkness approached, humanity had a single chance to prove them wrong. It was time to take their worthless trap and turn it into something that no one, not even the ones who had built it, could have ever expected. It was time to turn it into a superweapon. The silence before battle was suffocating. In the vastness of space, nothing could be seen. No flashes of energy weapons, no massive armadas blotting out the stars. And yet, every sensor, every warning system, and every nerve in the pilot's body told him the same thing. They were here. The alien fleet had arrived just beyond the edge of the solar system, lingering like predators waiting for their prey to make the first move. Their presence was not a mystery anymore. The ship, with its vast intelligence, had felt them. It had known this day would come. The only question that remained was whether humanity was ready. Inside the underground base, military strategists and scientists debated furiously. Could Earth even stand a chance? The ship, once seen as a relic, then a gift, and finally a trap, was now their best and only hope. The pilot knew this better than anyone. He could feel the ship's hunger for battle, its anticipation vibrating through his own bones. It had been built for war, not by humanity, but by something older, something more advanced. And now, it was in his hands. But he also knew one terrible truth. The enemy was expecting them to fail. Whoever had left this ship behind had done so with absolute certainty that humanity would never understand its true potential. They had calculated that Earth's scientists would struggle for decades, that human minds would never grasp the complexity of the alien technology. They believed the moment Earth activated the ship, it would serve as nothing more than an intergalactic flare, an announcement of their presence, their weakness, their ignorance. They had never considered what humanity was capable of. The pilot climbed into the ship's cockpit, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't just him sitting in a chair, pressing buttons, or guiding the vessel. The ship no longer needed commands. It understood him now, as much as he understood it. Thought became movement. Instinct became action. They had become one. As the ship's systems powered up, the underground hangar vibrated with raw energy. Unlike before, when the military had struggled to even activate its core, now it responded instantly, reshaping itself in real time. It was no longer a foreign warship sitting in a human-built facility. It had become something new. Something neither fully alien nor fully human. Something more. The order came through. Launch. The ship didn't move out of the hangar. It vanished. One moment, it was there. The next, it was a streak of impossible speed, ripping through Earth's atmosphere without resistance. Human jets struggled to keep up. Satellites barely had time to register its trajectory before it was gone, heading straight for deep space. And then the enemy responded. The darkness at the edge of the solar system stirred. Shadows materialized into shapes. Ships unlike anything humanity had ever seen, jagged and unnatural, bristling with weapons far beyond Earth's most advanced technology. They had remained hidden just long enough to confirm what they needed. To know, the trap had worked. Humanity had taken the bait. But before they could move, before they could strike Earth with overwhelming force, something unexpected happened. The human ship, the one they had discarded, the one they had left behind with the arrogance of a superior species, charged forward. Not to flee, not to negotiate, but to attack. The alien warships hesitated for a fraction of a second, their tactical computers scrambling to process an event that was never supposed to happen. That hesitation was all the pilot needed. He pushed the ship forward. No, he willed it forward. It obeyed. The blackness of space twisted around him as the vessel executed maneuvers that should have torn any conventional ship apart. The first enemy warship fired, unleashing a barrage of energy meant to obliterate him instantly. The ship responded before his mind could fully register the danger, disappearing just before impact, reappearing at a new angle in an impossible, physics-defying evasion. And then, the ship struck back. A beam of light, not from human weapons but from deep within the ship's ancient systems, erupted from its hull. It wasn't just energy. It was something more. Something that bent the very fabric of space as it moved. It tore through the enemy vessel in an instant, cutting through shields, armor, and alien technology as if it were paper. The first warship exploded. The enemy fleet hesitated. They had been wrong. Humanity had done something they never anticipated. Not only had they activated the ship, not only had they understood it, but they had become part of it. In a single moment, the balance of power shifted. The pilot could feel the enemy fleet's collective realization. They had left a weapon behind, expecting it to be nothing more than an artifact of a forgotten war. But instead, they had created something far worse. They had created a monster. The pilot grinned. It was time to show them what humans could really do. The battle erupted into chaos. The alien ships attempted to regroup, to recalculate, but the human vessel was faster, smarter, unpredictable. Where the enemy fought with cold precision, the pilot fought with instinct, creativity, and something they had never faced before: human defiance. The ship wasn't fighting alone anymore. It was fighting. With him, one by one, the enemy ships fell. Some attempted to flee, realizing too late that their trap had backfired. But there was no escape. The pilot and his ship moved like a storm, cutting through them with ruthless efficiency. In the span of minutes, an invasion force meant to crush. Earth had become a desperate retreat. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The pilot exhaled, floating in the silence of space, surrounded by the wreckage of ships that had once belonged to an empire that had underestimated humanity. The ship hummed around him, as if pleased. It had waited for so long to fight again. And now, it had found a species worthy of wielding its power. The message had changed. The original transmission, the warning, the declaration of superiority, was gone. Instead, a new signal was sent. Not just to Earth, but to the stars beyond. A simple message. We are here. And we are not afraid. Back on Earth, humanity watched in stunned silence as the impossible became reality. A single pilot, flying an alien warship once deemed worthless, had turned the tide against an enemy far beyond their understanding. This wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something far greater. A new era had dawned. And somewhere, in the depths of space, those who had once looked down on humanity were now faced with an undeniable truth. They had left behind a worthless ship. But humanity had turned it into a superweapon. And now, there would be no stopping them. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, subscribe to HFY Chronicles-849. The universe is vast, and together we'll uncover its greatest secrets.